Hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of True Mental Health. And today we are actually just going to be on the gram. So we'll get started here and then we'll include Facebook later with a download. We have some technical internet stuff going on. So we're just going to be here today talking about business, entrepreneurship, things like that. How's everybody doing? Welcome, welcome. Hello.
Hello.
You got that beach hair going on. I love it.
Thanks. It's wild. Hi, guys. Welcome to this crazy conversation yes.
We're in it. We're in the middle of it. And so we figured we should talk about it because
Let's talk about it.
What happens all the time with
Yeah.
entrepreneurship and business. And what is it? I was like creating in the mess. What is that?
That's so good. Yeah. So, guys, just so you know, we spent about 45 minutes trying to pick a topic for today, and we went all over the map. And, and what came down to it is that we're both kind of in this half-baked new space, looking at what's next phase. And I guess that's the thing to talk about. And where do we start with it?
I know, because
we're right in the middle of it.
I know. I was like, well, I was trying to remember when I wasn't in this place, because apparently it's happening quite frequently. Because I feel like when people are like, well, how's the business? And I keep wanting to say, well, I'm in this pivot or I'm making a hard right turn. I'm like, wait, when have I not said that?
Same. That's almost like that's really the normal. I guess what I've kind of noticed, I've been doing this now for probably 6 years, so a little bit longer, I guess. But the thing that I think I've noticed is that it kind of goes in like 3 to 6 month phases where, for about 6 months, this is give or take a month or 5, I have this sense of like kind of knowing what I'm doing and kind of where we're going and like, feels very vibrant and alive and active and things are ticking and humming. And then never fails that I will take a class or I'll read another book or I'll, get dissatisfied again about something and I'll do some research and whatever, and I'll shake things up. And for the next, 1 month to 3 months, it's like kind of blank canvas again. And so, I would say that being there it's never more comfortable than the last time.
No, and that's kind of what I was getting to, is that I've kind of gone through this season of massive consumption of learning about business. I mean, I've just completed my first year, so it's like I'm on the hamster wheel, learning all the things and just consuming so much that all of a sudden I got to this like, oh, I am full of information that now I'm almost not even hearing, or I was feeling like I wasn't even having access to my own inspiration. Yeah. Because I was just so overloaded with everything I've learned.
Yeah.
And so rather than it coming from, ooh, I have this inspiration to create this thing, I'm kind of like almost like walking through the motions right now. You know what I mean? Well, let me post or let me do the thing to keep it going.
Yeah, I'm not doing any of that. I quit everything.
Can't relate.
So this is, you guys are going to get to hear kind of like two different, I guess, ways of doing things. I mean, because there is no one way. There's just whatever you choose. And, the thing that I found about being a creator is that there are these pocket times where it's almost like you're either like draining the well of everything that you thought was essential for you to learn and kind of coming into your own, like you've copied all the painters. Like, this is the thing about learning to paint, is you copy other painters. Well, there comes a time when you're kind of like done copying other painters, but you don't necessarily know what your style of painting is, but you just got to kind of start and like bash around in it for a while to kind of find your footing. And then there's the times when you're like, you've painted for a while and then you're kind of like, well, that's like, what else? And there is this sort of like, for me, what's going on is there's this like, there's got to be another way of functioning that actually works better than this. Like I can live more, I have more ease, there's more money showing up. Like, how do I include all of me and awareness and consciousness? And so where you're kind of like dismantling energetically everything you've created so far and then allowing it instead of forcing it to fall together in a totally different way. And it kind of doesn't matter what phase you're in. It's like, it's all kind of clunky, no matter where you're at. So it's like embracing the clunk and embracing the uncomfort and finding a way forward.
Well, I was getting like, because it's kind of like, people don't talk about that, right? People,
No.
when they're selling, it's like, learn this thing because I've got it mastered and I've got it down and my business is running smoothly. And so then there's this kind of like, well, how are you doing it? And I'm like, no one's talking about this because this is not the sexy part of business.
No.
Well, yeah, I just clunked around and bashed around and it came together, or it didn't, or this one didn't do anything, right? It's like, why is no one talking about this?
Well, I think even me, I mean, I think what we value is like, systems, getting stuff done, like the
Yeah.
planner life, where the planner life really is like where you've got your day like organized and you get up in the morning and you do your workout and you do your green shake and you do your meditation, and you do your things, and then you get into the computer and you have to spend 2 hours here and 1 hour here and while I totally have appreciation for that kind of living and that can create success, the thing I don't see a lot of people choosing is like allowance for yourself.
Yeah.
Because how do you write a book about that? Like, I mean, like it doesn't really necessarily have a spreadsheet to it or a planner system. And that was the thing that really changed for me because I love organization. I love structure. I love the things that make life feel predictable.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, life's not that predictable. And, when you are in it, creating it, and you're really paying attention to energies as they move, and you get information about those energies as you move, life shows up in a much more unpredictable way, which is kind of really the way things actually are. But it's not a common practice, I guess. I don't think it's very common.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, to me, I'm kind of seeing a couple different things of it being, in the sense of a trauma response of us needing to want to control and hold
Right.
on to things because trauma is
Yeah.
the biggest breach, right? And unpredictability.
Yeah.
And then also just this reality where there's so much value on the calendar being back to back to back to back. And it's kind of like, how do you teach people to be, to create versus to do, to create? Because right now, like you said, it's all these systems because it's like, okay, yes, I can implement that. But I'm like, no, be kind of like when we were talking this morning
Yeah.
and you're like, I'm just sweating outside near the ocean, and just enjoying the beach.
You're like, what time can you talk? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to be
Yes.
out here sweating until further notice. Just give me a call.
Yeah. And even because I had a space this morning too. And I was like, well, I guess I should be doing something. Like it was still that what I've, I don't know, I guess just been programmed or what's used to in this reality.
I would say
of just,
programmed. And
yeah.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I was taking a walk this morning with my partner and we were talking about the same thing because he's really like we have the thing we're doing together, but he's also personally looking at like, last night we were in the pool drinking wine and living. And, he was like, I don't really know what to put my attention on next. He's in this place in his own life where this in-between time where, yes, we've totally changed our life and we're living somewhere else. And he does have a role in that. But like, so I said, well, have you ever looked at asking just a totally different question? And so the example I gave, which might be helpful to everybody listening, is like, for so long in my life, I was doing a lot of survival. And if you break that all down, that shows up in a lot of different ways, right?
Sure.
It shows up in money and it shows up in how you spend your time. And like, if you're just, especially if it's unconscious, like if you're just surviving things, you're choosing differently than if you're actively creating thrival or you're actively creating something. And so I didn't know I was doing it, obviously, and then read an access consciousness thing. And this guy said, well, you've got to give up survival as a point of view.
Mm.
It was exactly that. I was like,
Yeah.
dog. What? And I think I spent 3 days with it. I really did, because it wedged something open in my world just enough that I was like, wow, if I really let this in, this is gonna transform the way I function in the world. And as he and I were talking last night about this in between time, I recognized a similar activity in his world just from knowing him for 3 years and watching him. And I was like, how much of your energy have you been spending trying to survive the women in your life? The choices that you've made, the choices from the past that you're still navigating here in the present. And he recognized that, and it was like a lot. Like, I'm really still just surviving. And I was like, what if you asked a different question? What if you asked, woke up in the morning and just went, okay, if I was actively creating thrival today, what would I choose? And so I came out this morning and he was on the patio just kind of, popping away on the laptop, just doing stuff. And he's like, I asked that question this morning. And I was like, that's cool. And as we were walking, I was like, the thing about when you start to ask a different question is like, it's very much like planting a seed. And what we typically want to do is we want to plant the seed and then we want to go dig it up to see what it's doing, to see if it's growing, to like micromanage the seed into growing.
Oh, yeah.
When what the seed really needs is to just be plunked in some great ground, with a fair bit of sun and some water, and just let it do its seed thing. And that's, to me, what I recognize is occurring in my world, and I see happening for a lot of other people, where what's really required for the seeds just to really start to grow into what they are going to do, they will do it, is space and patience. And, the trick with being a very, very active humanoid being that just needs so many things going on at the same time is that you then have to keep yourself busy living. Otherwise, you're going to micromanage these new kernels of things you're aware of, things you're choosing that aren't yet coming to fruition, questions you've asked, things you've asked of the universe, none of which you may have even articulated is going on. But when you can't grasp the thing that feels concrete, that is what's going on. And it requires a fair bit of patience.
Yeah. Especially when you just want to like, what's next? And
Yeah.
are you going to do the thing? Are you sure you're going to do the thing? Maybe you'll do the thing. Maybe you won't do the thing. And versus just following that energy and being able to let go, which I definitely have a hard time doing because I want to define it and control it and explain it and what will it do. And that's so much of this reality that we've been taught is the right way. So to function from this undefined space of just like following it and not trusting, more just knowing.
Well, yes. And I've been wondering about this trusting thing, because the truth, like, trust isn't, if you do blind faith, like, I know this is going to work out, is blind faith. I know this is just going to work out. Well, it's not exactly that. It's like, but there is an element of trust. There's this, and I think you're right. I think it's synonymous with knowing. It's like knowing that, being willing to know that what you've chosen and what you've asked for will come to fruition when it does and how it does. And that's straight out of a really incredible resource called the How to Become Money Workbook by Gary Douglas. It's like how to become money. You become power. You become creativity. You become awareness. You become, there's one more thing. Anyway, you become these things. And power is not power over something. It's like that, exuberant, rich energy of knowing. I am awareness is that I have asked for it and it will come to fruition. I am control is controlling from the knowledge that what you've asked for will occur in the time that it does and how it does. So it's this really, really intangible internal dance with yourself. And for me, the muscle I'm building is like keeping myself out of my head with it. Because the moment I go into my head, I'm trying to order it. The moment I allow myself to be it, it sort of lives down here in my body. And to me, that's the new work. That's the work that I've not really heard anybody talking about, because the moment I go up here, I kill it. Yeah. If I live here, then I can choose and breathe and move and perceive. And I always know when it's time to move living here.
Yeah, there's something as you're talking about that, I was looking over how last year and the periods where things were just going swimmingly or having my highest income months. And I was very much just choosing being, and it happened almost as if it felt by magic. Like it just like, oh, that was so easy. I didn't have to do a lot of work. And then I went exactly what you're saying is I went up into my head, let me figure this out. Let me replicate this. Let me try to do the same thing. And then I was like, why is it hard now? All of a sudden it shifted, and it's like, it's like you can't even replicate in the being. It's just like constantly choosing from where you're at that day of what is going to create more.
Yeah, and if you look at the way nature functions, does nature ever try to replicate, or do they just create, like, even if you look at the same, I was a landscape designer and I studied a lot of plant stuff.
Mm.
Yeah. So I know enough about the plant world to be dangerous. But the thing that really struck me is that in the nursery industry, what's done is plants are cloned. So they literally take, so every single tree that you see in a nursery that's for sale is exactly the same tree,
Oh,
because
interesting.
then they can control it. They
Yeah,
can
they
control
look
the look.
perfect.
Exactly. So they
Yeah.
look perfect. So of course they build the rootstock or the stock of the tree into exactly what they want, and then they clone that thing that they know is going to sell. So
Wild.
yeah, but in nature, plants aren't cloned. They are derivatives of each other. They have elements that are similar to the other plant, but they're very different, which means in nature, one plant species can survive because their differences actually ensure the survival of the species and the propagation of the species. Well, in because in the man-made world, we've cloned plants. If a particular beech tree gets a pest, all the beech trees that are that
Mm-hmm.
clone are wiped out. And so actually in Canada, this happened. There's this beautiful tree that everybody wanted. It was a birch tree, actually, the white bark,
Oh, I
beautiful
love that.
thing,
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, all the birch trees in Canada are now dead because there was a pest that discovered he
Oh.
liked the birch tree and thought it was yummy, and he
Yeah.
ate them all. And so now there are almost no birch trees in Canada because of the choice we made to
Mm.
make everything the same, to replicate it. This one's beautiful. I want this level of beautiful everywhere.
Mm.
And so it actually destroys things instead of allowing things to be that slight bit of difference, the small variation that will, of course, come as you just are creating and naturally going forward and evolving, which ensures the longevity, the propagation, the proliferation of everything. We try to clone one success and make it, and it actually just doesn't work.
Mm. I love that example. So what do you, because I know you've talked about this before
Yeah.
regarding like being able to create in this place of not being totally clear on what's next or what to choose next. Like how do you function in this space?
I am playing with it all the time in a different way, but I typically kind of do a lot of pinging. Now, I can kind of talk about what I mean by that. Um, I think I can talk about it.
I
As I'm looking at it, like, can I
do
talk
my
about this?
thing.
Yeah. Well, I go looking for if there's anything that actually matches an energy. When you hit a pocket of, I think what people call flow is actually kind of hitting that pocket of congruence where the
Mm-hmm.
convergence of what you're aware of, what's available, what's ease, like just kind of converges into this moment of possibilities. And
Yeah.
and that can occur when you're writing or riding a bike. Slip into being. Things become what they can naturally be. And when it comes to like creating in business, again, there's this convergence. So I go looking for the convergence of energies, and it can occur so many different ways, man. I'll pop open my Kindle, for example, and I've got like, 25 books in there, and I'll just kind of scroll through them like I'm walking through a bookstore kind of thing and go anything, anything. And if something kind of pops out and hits me in the eyeball, like me, I'll open it, see what page it lands on, and see what topic is there or what energy is there. Um, I will do the same thing with some of the reference materials I have. So I use printed materials to kind of stimulate things. Sometimes it will stimulate an idea. Sometimes it will ping a thing that I was aware of, back then. Sometimes it will give me a tool that creates more ease or more clarity or more articulation for something that's occurring.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of different things can come out of that. The other thing I do is I keep in places like ClickUp or Slack or my notes app on my Mac. I keep a lot of my just different random ideas, random musings. So sometimes I'll like troll through those and just see like what's here, like what was I aware of 6 months ago that maybe now is the time for. So I guess in living as a person who knows that these spaces occur, I kind of constantly in the times where things are prolific and they're coming through in a lot of clarity, I keep track of those,
Yeah.
knowing that they might not be for now, they might be for the future. And so I think there's just different systems I've put in place to stimulate me now or in the future or never. And I use those to kind of go back through. And then sometimes, like, I'm in a phase right now where done all that, I'm doing all the things, I'm just kind of like, it reminds me of a kid in Montessori school.
Mm-hmm. Try this one for size. Try this one on for size.
I totally Montessori school my life. That's what I do. I totally do that. I was like, I'm thinking about this. I'm like, this is what I do. I just kind of walk around the room and I like kind of look at all the exercises and I see if any of them pop. And if none of them do, then I go watch other people work, literally.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I Montessori school. Yeah. Okay. And the premise of Montessori school is like, the kid always knows. The kid always knows. So just give them choice. Give them choice. Give them stuff to do, and they'll pick the thing. And then give them 2 rules. Like, they need to take it off the shelf and clean it and put it back on the shelf. And that's it. And I was like,
yeah. Keep it simple.
Yeah. So
yeah. We're going to say something.
No, I was going to ask you, like, are you playing with this? Like, how are you playing with this? How are you finding this process for you?
Yeah. So I noticed recently, because, what I had in my head of like, well, I'm going to create this webinar situation because that's very much what this reality says to do.
And so sometimes webinars are fun and they work. And so it's never one thing. It's not a black and white universe.
Exactly. So I was noticing it just as I was sitting down to do it, feeling a lot of resistance and going into like, well, if I was in flow, then this should be happening faster. And if this was the right thing to choose, I would just have tons of ideas. And I was just trying to let all that stuff go and just sit with it and actually give myself more space than I thought it was going to be required. And I was thinking with this, I was like, oh, boom, boom, I'll have this done. And as I look at the project, I'm like, wow, okay, this is actually requiring a lot more than I thought. That's okay. Yeah. So if I just sat with it and just kind of milked my way through it, took my time. I mean, I had the space to do it. So, which I love having that now. It's just like, I have the space. So what would that create if I just took the time? And it's funny because then as I started to get into it, then it started to like pick up like a roller coaster. I started to go downhill and things started to just like flow and come out. And all of a sudden now here it was like all of a sudden coming together. Yet if I had stopped earlier on in the process, I wouldn't have allowed that possibility. Like if I had made the initial resistance wrong, then I wouldn't have gotten to the other side. So
that's interesting. So you didn't make it wrong. So what? So yeah, that's huge.
Because isn't there so much about like, well, it's same because with like pinging energy and learning to kind of tune into it, I was more at a place of, well, what is this? Is it like, am I creating the resistance from deciding it should be a certain way or this should come out of me a certain way or whatnot? But just kind of having, almost like you're using the child example, like having the patience with myself, sitting with the energy and be like, okay, like, what are you? What is this? What do you need? What do you require? Can we just check this out? Just one piece of broccoli? Can we just try that? And then all of a sudden, the plate is clear or whatnot, being able to, it just kind of started to come out in that way.
Yeah, I think child examples are probably more applicable than we want to look at because like if you look at the way kids function, like the way we naturally functioned that we then changed to function in an adult way, in a way that, I mean, kids, you give kids you give kids a cardboard box and they create a reality. Like cats would rather have a cardboard box than a cat toy. So maybe we need to keep more cardboard boxes around, like,
well, it's kind of, that's interesting because too, it's like, I get the vision of the cardboard box. All of a sudden it's like, it's blank and it's offering you space to create and put your own thing on it versus where I was at, which was like consume. I have all the prettiest toys on the shelf, but none of them, I don't want to play with any of them.
Yeah. All these toys are well put together. They're well marketed, they're well branded, and give me the box.
Yeah. Use some scissors to like cut a hole in it.
But this is interesting too, because this is the thing about business. And this is what I'm facing right now. I've last 6 months or something, I put a lot of energy into like I was having a lot of conversations with people about establishing my brand, you know. I never really thought about my brand before, honestly. And then I started thinking about it and, you know, talking to people about it. And so I was like, okay, my brand. Okay, so this is branded and people are, anyway. And where I'm at, where that took me was this, like I had to then fit myself into my brand rather than continuing to be myself, which is what the brand was fucking was in the first place, you know? And
Yeah.
so, but I didn't realize that until I took a business done different class with Access Consciousness, which I'm so excited I'm going to facilitate because it's such a gift. So I'm in the class and, you know, I was asking my questions and I was like, you know, this thing about the brand, and she's like, well, if you didn't have to maintain your brand, what could you choose? And you could just feel the inside of me going, but I've worked so hard for my brand and my brand is the thing. And it was like, I don't know if you've ever seen Spider-Man 3 where he like gets infected by the black entity that like takes him over slowly and he just becomes Black Spider-Man and he like can no longer separate Black Spider-Man from himself, sort of like that.
Interesting.
The brand was like
Yeah.
And so it was interesting to just notice inside of me these places where certain structures had become kind of sacrilegious. Well, we don't touch that structure, right? We gotta leave that in place. We have to uphold this. But the thing was that doing that, it's a choice I have. But choosing it in that way was like making it really hard for me to create my business. And that's not gonna work. And I think this is, you know, the premise of our whole show was to kind of look at these different things and go, well, what renders us more functional? You know, is it upholding the brand and or is it something else? You know, is it, you know, one of the things I play with that really frees me up is like, okay, if I could fire all my choices, if I could fire the fucking brand,
Yeah.
what would I bring back? You know, what would I bring back into and what would I add and what would I change and what would I choose? And that all of a sudden renders me more functional. I all of a sudden have choice again. I've got a cardboard box now. The business is a cardboard box. Go wild, you know?
Well, it's like the questions you're asking totally just, I could melt in the process and relax, which then in turn gives you more access to the creative centers of your brain. So it's like very pragmatic too.
Okay.
And
you know the science.
We know the science. And I'm wondering, so then, you know, because you and I have done a lot of like business learning and learning how to do business. So is it balance? Is it integration? What is it with like using what we've learned kind of from this reality as well as what you know? How do you?
Well, I think if we looked at it more like, if we looked at it from a kid's point of view and we looked at a table full of arts and crafts, it's like we've got a table full of paints. Like I looked at I've bought in the last year website templates, 2 different quiz softwares, you know, sales page templates, website, like this webinar, that course, I have my table, I'm looking at a table, is full of stuff. I got stuff. I got paints, I got markers, I got watercolors, I've got all this stuff. And what I tend to do with a lot of those is turn them into things that I've either failed at or I haven't used, or, you know, I use them to judge me lots of times, which doesn't make me functional. But it's like, if we looked at all these different things we've learned as like, you know, craft supplies, would we have a different point of view about it? It's like, what's going to really create something here? What would be fun? We've got a cardboard box and a table full of craft supplies. Like, oh, goody.
Well, and the way things are marketed here is usually like, just follow this step by step. All you have to do is do
paint by number.
Don't think. Yeah, paint by number. Yes, and it's not like, where's
your
the creativity?
6 colors, here's your paintbrush, and here's your book, and you follow our plan for you. Which, okay, let's face it, there's some really beautiful paint by number paintings. It can work.
Yeah.
Does it work for you?
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only thing that's relevant. Does it allow you to thrive? Does it give you the space to be? Are you happier? And is that relevant? And if it's not, what if it could be?
Yeah. Well, it's like, I guess, asking that question to literally everything that you're looking at. Is this relevant for me? Will this create greater if I choose this? Right? Because it's like something that is more structured might give you more information on how you want to add a system, because, you know,
totally.
as we scale, we need some systems, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been getting that with even content creation is looking at, well, okay, I was just very much like create intuitively and just post. And I was like, but then it ultimately was not feeling as sustainable for me. So I was looking at, okay, if I looked at this one topic a month and I just extrapolated it, how many different ways, and then this topic. And right now I'm just playing with it to see if it works, right? But it's like, I
Cool.
kind of have to give it a fair shot to embody the energy of it. Cause at first I was like, this is really, cause it's not how I normally function. But as I'm getting into it, I'm like, okay, I can see the relevance of this and how could I apply this in the future? And maybe I'll be more flexible as I learn more about it.
Yeah.
Um, but what more will that contribute?
And the only thing I would add to that that I forget sometimes is to just stay in touch with yourself and go,
Yeah.
okay, well, I said I was going to give this a fair shake. What if I didn't have to? Like, if at
Yeah.
any point, if
Yeah.
it is, and it's really just at the points where things start to feel hard or heavy. And that's the
Yeah.
only thing I wanted to add for anybody listening, because you always have another choice. You never have to maintain anything. You can always create something new. You can always
Mm.
change it. You always have another choice. And to me, that's the greatest gift of consciousness or access consciousness, and is knowing that. And so, it can render you more undefined, but it can also render you happier. And if that's of any value to you, the moment it gets hard, sticky, or heavy, just go, okay, if I had another choice here, what would I choose? And, you know, render yourself functional again.
Get functional.
Get functional with Crystal and Janine.
I was like, is it functional? Functionable. I don't know.
Whatever. Yes.
Both.
New word.
Making them up. Oh my gosh.
Oh, we did it. And
We
thank you guys
did
so
it.
much for joining us. This has been I'll tell you, like, being an entrepreneur is definitely not for the faint of heart. It once you choose it, it owns you and then facilitates you and invites you constantly into either destroying yourself or becoming more, getting stronger, being greater, being more you, and in a very undefined way. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And if you're wanting support in the process, because I love lots of support in the process. We both offer one-on-ones and group
Yeah.
stuff. So definitely reach out if you're feeling called for a little support along the journey.
Yeah. Cool.
All
Well, I adore
right.
you. I
I
adore you
adore you.
guys. Oh my
We'll see you
God.
next time.
All right. Bye.
Bye.